What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. The 4 p.m. Eastern Time deadline has passed, and the Steelers have declined running back Najee Harris's fifth-year option. Just want to jump on here real quick, just talk about this thing from a couple different angles and drop some quick thoughts just on the decision, what it means for the team, what it means for the player, and then just kind of look forward, look back at kind of where we are, where we're going, and how we got here. But I think first and foremost, the fifth-year option, 6.79 million is what the decision was in terms of extending Najee Harris's contract another year into 2025. With the declining of the option, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent after this season. Coincidentally, his running mate Jalen Warren will also be a restricted free agent after the season as well. So you got two backs in the same backfield, both of which could potentially be hitting the market next offseason. But, I think it says a lot of different things. First off, from a team standpoint, I think, with Arthur Smith coming in, it'll be a lot more zone heavy, probably a lot more outside zone heavy, mid zone, less power gap concepts. I think there may be some hesitation in their minds as far as like how that's going to fit Najee's skill set. Najee's numbers were fine on outside zone last season, just there wasn't a lot of reps to go off of. That's really not what he's done a ton of, even dating back to Alabama. And even like some of their better rushing concepts last year were really pullers, gap stuff, power stuff, kind of incorporating that stuff into the offense. But Arthur Smith's always been his own guy, so that's could be some hesitation just in terms of not knowing how he's going to fit into the offense, what type of player is he going to be in this rushing scheme, all those things, and then the financial aspect of it, making him a top 12 paid running back in the NFL might just be some hesitation on that as well. Can't really speak too much to it, just kind of trying to like read between the lines. Najee's had over 1,000 yards the last 3 seasons, really pretty consistent. Like you just look at the numbers, it's 1,200, 1,000, 1,000, 7 touchdowns in all 3 seasons on the ground. Some of the things I do think, Najee took a step forward with last year, just in terms of, I mentioned this on the show quite a bit, but just in terms of breaking off more explosive runs, over the first 2 seasons, he had 9 rushes for over 15 or more yards as a rookie, 7 the following season, but he doubled that this past year in 2023 up to 14. So that was really nice. But I think like anytime you're talking about a back that doesn't necessarily handle, not that he's not capable, but doesn't necessarily handle all 3 downs or play a ton in third down and passing situations, and hasn't been used heavily as a receiver since he was a rookie. I think it's tough to warrant, paying those guys quite a bit of money, even though I do feel like Najee's a very solid running back. I just think, when we revisit kind of how we got here and all the steps that kind of led to this, you look at Kevin Colbert's decision in that draft class as far as, to get, Ben in 2021, trying to get Ben 2 more weapons on offense with the running back, Harris, tight end, and Freiermuth, trying to get those guys to kind of inject some offensive firepower into the offense. But I think, the order of which they did that was a little bit misguided. They had a heavily declining offensive line that had gotten older. We saw Marquise Pouncey, we saw David DeCastro really, over that 2020 season, you kind of saw a steep decline in their play. And instead of, really putting those resources into the offensive line, they decided to put it into playmakers. And, that's been mixed results, because I think that both Harris and Freiermuth are very solid players. It's just, it did cause a little bit of a delay in terms of, rebuilding this offensive line. I do think it also speaks a little bit to the difference in potential organizational direction with Andy Weidl, with Omar Khan, this new regime with Mike Tomlin still, obviously heavily in the mix, just wanting to put a lot of investments, a lot of resources into the offensive line. Just look at what they did in the NFL draft. They got Troy Fautanu, and then the second round drafted Zach Frazier. Early day 3 got Mason McCormick. Mason McCormick was a guy who had potential top 100 buzz. So three picks in the first 4 rounds, all offensive line related. This comes only a year after they traded up in the first round for Broderick Jones. So they've invested a ton in the trenches, and I feel like we're seeing a little bit of an organizational shift just in terms of, what they're really going to prioritize moving forward. And it could potentially give us some hints about, where this thing's going down the line. Now, as far as the player goes, I actually don't think that this is the worst thing in the world for Najee Harris, just because it does give him the opportunity to hit the open market a year earlier. Najee's already 26 years old. He's got over, I think, 800 or so carries already on his resume. Yeah, 858 carries. He's been extremely durable. So that was one of the reasons why I thought that they may pick it up, just because he's been so reliable. He's always in the lineup. He back through different stretches. You think of the foot injury early, I guess it was this past season. Started off a little bit slow, but I mean, he's played through stuff. He's constantly been available, and that's a big part of the running back position. You're going to take a lot of hits. There's a lot of wear and tear with it, but at least for Harris, assuming that there isn't some type of short extension or anything like that that gets done, which I would find a little bit surprising at this juncture. For that to happen before the season, for him, it's going to give him the opportunity to potentially hit the market a year earlier. You get to hit the market at 27 instead of 28. We know running backs have an incredibly short shelf life, so there's just not. These guys don't play for a long time just because of the physical contact, the violence that's involved with the position. So, I don't necessarily think it's the worst thing in the world for him. I do just think it was a little bit surprising to me that they decline the option now that we're here, but it's a little bit frustrating too, because I feel like 4 years ago, granted I didn't have the YouTube channel and everybody was doing different things and whatever, but it just felt like this was always such a easy outcome to kind of predict, that this wasn't going to be that move was really short-sighted at the time that they were making it. Going into that draft, everyone and their mom knew that they were taking a running back, and they did it anyway. They did it in the first round, and not to say you have to be a truly special type of playmaker at the running back position to kind of warrant that first round draft selection, just because the longevity, the shelf life, the span of a player's career just doesn't last as long as some of these other positions. You think about, quarterbacks, obviously is a different thing. Those guys can play now for 15 or more years, but even looking at some of the other positions, you get a bona fide stud on the offensive line, those guys could play 10 plus years for you. Of course, if everything works out and you hit and everything goes according to plan, but it's so predictable, man, the way this thing played out, because, a second contract for a guy that was, even if your option, that 5th-year option was going to expire and he was going to be 28 and hitting free agency, it was really difficult to see a second contract ever being even into play at this point, because at that point, we already knew that Najee was he was a senior coming out of Alabama, a lot of carries. He already had a lot of wear and tear on his body. It was difficult to see a path for him to getting a second contract here. And I just think you look at it from a value perspective, it just never really made sense in real time, even if you really liked him as a prospect, which I did. I thought he was the top ranked running back in that class. And I've really enjoyed watching him play, and he's a solid player. I think that, it's slightly encouraging to me that the organization may be moving away from that philosophy of, okay, we've got to take a running back in the first round. They've done that a couple times. Rashard Mendenhall back in, I think that was 2007. And then Harris most recently, but yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting decision. We'll just have to see. Another kind of part that kind of plays into all this stuff is, I had Nick Martin on the channel recently. You guys got to hear a lot of good draft insights from him, but me and him have been talking about this, but this is a really good running back class for 2025. I've been diving deep over the last couple of days into some prospects, just trying to get a general feel for some of the best players at the different positions, to get some summer scouting underway, which I'll be doing a lot of over the next couple of months before the college football season, NFL season really kicks off. But this is a really good running back class. Some of the names to watch for, Ohio State has a really talented duo with Judkins and Travion Henderson, a guy who broke out as a freshman, was a little bit banged up last year, which is, some potential cause for concern. But those two guys are definitely going to be in the mix for some of the top guys at the position off the board. Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State, I've seen a little bit of him. Omarion Hampton, North Carolina, I was watching some clips of him right before I jumped on. So there's a lot of guys I feel like that are going to insert themselves into the mix in terms of being, taken in the first couple rounds of the draft. This is considered, like I said, by consensus and people that I trust in the draft industry and the draft spectrum, that this is considered to be a really good running back class. So that's something to keep in mind on too. This guy's not falling. Running back's also one of those positions where guys can kind of hit the ground running a little bit as rookies. If there's any position that is easily translatable in terms of getting a good impact from rookies, it's the running back position. So it's not the complete end of the world. The Steelers are going to probably have some other needs as well that I would probably prefer them addressed before running back next year, assuming, they can't work out a long-term deal with one of these guys. But it is all of these things make for a really interesting discussion. And I'm sure this is going to be a heavy talking point throughout the summer, throughout next year, in terms of, what are they going to do? How's this thing going to play out? I think the best course of action, man, is to just roll the ball out. See how both these backs look in this offense, see how everything meshes together. I mean, for all we know, like Smith's offense could just be a terrible fit for everybody involved. And, everybody has to move on at the end of the season. I mean, there's nothing guaranteed about this thing. I'm optimistic that won't be the case, but I think it's a good decision. There's not any long-term contracts really on the offensive side of the ball. And I think it's going to be an interesting fall because we're going to get to see the quarterbacks who they don't have anyone signed for next year. No one signed next year right now at the running back position. Lots of question marks. I just think it's about, building this offensive line, winning with the bigs, trying to prioritize the right things on offense. And then, hopefully you get good enough quarterback play to where you're confident with one of these guys moving forward. But you don't want to hit your wagon to pieces that that you're not 100% sure on as potential fits for what you want to do on offense. And I think that these decisions, at least I can see the vision on in a vacuum. So I appreciate, as always, you guys tapping into the channel with me. I really am excited about the next couple of weeks. Roman Wilson film room been delayed a little bit. I apologize for the delay, but I will drop that tomorrow. I've already cut everything up. I've edited it. I've just got to record it now. So, but we'll drop that on the channel tomorrow, just on your way out. Please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, drop me a comment. Let me know what you guys think of the decision to decline Najee Harris's 5th-year option. And I will see you guys next time. Peace and love.